Catherine Jeffries. I started a business called Yummy Bubby, providing healthy food for babies and toddlers. As your baby starts to grow, once it gets to about 6 months, it's recommended that you start feeding the baby solids. To do this, you need to incorporate one different food at a time. This is because it's easier to monitor whether a child has a reaction to a food if you slowly introduce a food over a period of days. So I would start with something like pumpkin and stay with pumpkin for 3 or 4 days. If the baby's taking well to that, you can then start on something like broccoli. If you see a change in your baby's reaction to food, its demeanour, or the way it's processing the food, you then will know that it's the broccoli that caused the reaction and not the pumpkin. So it's important to do it this way until you get a number of vegetables incorporated into their diet. Once they get to about 8 to 9 months, you'll have introduced so many different types of vegetables and fruit that you can start to mix them all together during that period. At 6 months, your baby will be eating different types of pureed foods. Once they get to about 8.5 to 9 months, you'll start to introduce not only meat at that stage, or protein, whether it be tofu or something else, but you'll also start to introduce a different texture of food, and that's a chunky style texture for your child. Some toddlers will take to this and really enjoy the difference, and some toddlers won't. Try not to get too upset about whether they do or they don't at that stage. They've got a long time to get used to it, and you can slowly introduce those things. It's still really important to, if they're not taking to the chunky version of things, to try and get the vegetables into their diet somehow. So that's where hiding the vegetables is very effective with some toddlers. But now this meal I'm cooking, being a lamb bolognese, is going to incorporate eggplant, mushrooms, zucchini, tomato and spinach. We're going to hide half of those because you quite often find toddlers won't eat vegetables if they can see them too clearly. Lots of people are a bit reluctant to add herbs to their food because they think that toddlers won't like them. Toddlers love flavour, and herbs add flavour to your food naturally. Now you can still include tomato in a sauce, but what I generally do is just wazz it up. It's still in there. It helps activate the iron in the spinach, in your leafy greens, and your toddler is none the wiser. It also adds incredible flavour, so get some nice ripe tomatoes. Now this meal, even though you're making some minor adjustments for your toddler, is still a meal that the whole family can enjoy. If your toddler only likes rice, you can serve it with rice for him and pasta for everybody else. It is versatile that way. The other thing you need to keep in mind when you're cooking is cook the things that take longest first, because you can keep the nutrients in food by cooking them for the least amount of time. So things like potato and pumpkin, which take a while to cook, add them in first. Eggplant takes a while to soften, so we're going to put that in first, and we're going to put the spinach and mushroom in last because they don't take a long time to cook. A lot of people add their meat early on in the cooking process, When you have things like minced lamb, minced beef, minced chicken, because the pieces are so small, by virtue of the fact that they're so small, they cook really quickly. So putting them in early on can tend to overcook the meat and make it a little bit rubbery and tasteless by the time it gets to the end of the cooking process. So I tend to add the meat in at the end where it can retain, it will still be cooked, but it retains optimum flavour. Try not to give up too easily with your toddler. I know it can be trying sometimes, but remember that you're in charge of what they eat. You decide what goes on their plate. So as long as what you put on their plate is a healthy option, you're doing a great job. The beauty of a dish like this as well, not only can it be served with potato and pasta or rice, or even couscous is great, but when you do have a child, perhaps a child that's gluten-free, there are so many options out there now. You can buy gluten-free pasta. So all you need to do, you can actually cook up the same base thing and just have the gluten-free pasta cooked up for them and incorporated into the same meal for the whole family. This is something that you would give to a baby that's about 9 months plus. A baby that's tried a variety of foods already, because it's quite flavoursome and it has quite a few different ingredients in it. You can serve it up just as is, or with a little bit of cheese, maybe some ricotta cheese, fresh cheese through it, to incorporate the dairy aspect. Now generally when I cook, I'll make a big lot of food and I'll freeze whatever's left over in different size portions. But you may find that your child doesn't want to eat the same thing all the time, hence the freezing. So you probably would need to make perhaps 3 or 4 different types of meals so that you have a variety to offer your child. Now if you're working, this would be something you would need to do over a weekend when you've got some spare time. Now for a lot of parents, this is just really not what they'd like to be doing on their weekend. And for those parents, that's why I started Yummy Bubby, because you don't have time, you're time poor, and the time you do have, you want to spend in the company of your child doing the fun things. Another factor to consider when you're feeding your young baby or toddler is that it's much easier to start a baby on healthy foods rather than try and change their diet later. So my advice would be is that if you're starting to incorporate solids into your baby's diet, that you start with the healthy ones. You'll get a good all-round diet for your child there, which will really help with their development and growth. Have a good day.